Hi, I'm Tracy Hinds. I'm the lead of Fast Forward at Fastly. That's the open source program office where we donate millions of dollars in infrastructure annually to the builders and defenders of the open web. I'm also chair of the board at the Open Source Initiative, and I'm newly on the steering committee at Invest in Open Infrastructure. Past Node contributor, open source governance nerd, community builder, but let's dive into the story. Our digital world, as it was originally conceived, traces its genesis back to CERN in 1989, where Tim Berners-Lee envisioned and developed the World Wide Web. The web was born out of a simple collaborative need to create a system for automated information sharing between scientists and universities and institutes around the world. The core idea developed as merging evolving technologies of computing, data networks, and hypertext into a powerful and globally accessible information system that was easy to use. The first web browser, World Wide Web, quite literally, was not just a tool for viewing content. It included the delightful and radical ability at the time to modify pages directly from within the browser, reflecting a foundational principle of participatory creation. The original promise of the internet, a shared digital commons, thriving on open collaboration and ingrained trust boundaries. A cool idea, right? We, as developers and contributors, built it on the open source ethos long before that definition or phrase was known, a system where sharing and respectful use were the norm. The early ancestors of today's web crawlers, such as the initial search engine crawlers of the 90s, were a crucial part of that ecosystem. Their purpose was to perform a vital public service, indexing the vast, unorganized digital libraries so that we could find information easily. Their activities were governed by a simple and cooperative protocol known as robots.txt file. This plain text file was a form of social contract for the digital age, where website owners could politely declare a request that crawlers avoid certain sections of their site. The file's primary function was to manage traffic and prevent server overload, not to serve as a security mechanism for hiding information. The reliance on this non-binding protocol underscored a broader cultural value. The web was founded on this delicate social contract of mutual respect and shared benefit, where participants were to self-regulate for the common good. So for years, the rules were simple, defined by the Scout's honor existence of the robots.txt file. We knew the actors, we sort of trusted them to be good neighbors, but today that foundation is very shaky. The advent of generative AI is creating a quickly growing trust deficit. The sheer scale and speed of AI crawlers are overwhelming our infrastructure, draining our resources, and consuming our creative output without the choice of opting in. This isn't necessarily a war against AI, but it's certainly a crisis of the boundaries of consent. And as I've alluded, the cooperative spirit we've been operating on is our history and the foundation of the internet up to this point. It was rooted in the pre-internet open source culture where programmers informally shared source code for decades through networks, computer magazines, and even on magnetic tapes. This ethos of the community-driven creation and reciprocal contribution laid the foundational infrastructure for the web that we know today, for now, from its core protocols to the tools used by its builders. Honor systems aren't really cutting it these days, though, right? The challenge for me, for all of us then, is how do we preserve the integrity and delight of the open web when we are perpetually caught in the crossfire between automated extraction and the lagging efforts to establish clear data standards and regulations, the teeth sometimes when we need it, that protect, when the average consumer doesn't even know a battle for their digital environment is being waged. The shape of that answer is that we must move beyond the primitive reactionary blocking and embrace architectural sovereignty. We need to build systems that empower us to define and enforce our own terms of engagement. So The builders of the open web are being threatened by this creeping, sometimes sprinting, quantifiable shift. In 2024, for the first time in a decade, automated bot traffic surpassed human activity, accounting for 50% of all web traffic, 51%, sorry. And this summer, in 2025, our next staggering metric milestone. Only 1 in 5 visitors to a website was a real human, with AI model training alone representing nearly 80% of all AI bot activity on those visits. So the response of yore from web lords, web devs, sysadmins, was a naive refusal of the call, a steadfast belief in the old ways. It was assumed that robots.txt would have to be sufficient. This over-reliance on that single protocol, what felt like overnight, revealed a major vulnerability with new actors straight up ignoring the cooperative framework. The failure of the robots.txt protocol as a shield was in our faces turning point as a crisis of governance and trust. So just to clarify as well, what is a bot? So we've got benign crawlers, malicious bots, general bots, and malicious bots are scraping, credential stuffing, DDoSing, ad fraud, et cetera. So let's talk about the problem at scale. The AI crawler is a fundamentally different beast than its predecessors. It's shifted from a fringe annoyance to a dominant growing traffic force. Its primary directive is simple: to ingest as much data as possible, as fast as possible, to train its massive models. And this indiscriminate high volume scraping creates a swarm effect, which has critical negative impacts on the open web. So the sheer relentless barrage of requests drains our resources. This isn't a malicious DDoS attack necessarily, but the result is the same. Slowdowns and outages for legitimate users, for digital libraries and archives, including your well-trodden paths to package registries, whose missions are open access. This is devastating and exhausting. They're forced to pay high bandwidth and hosting costs simply to exist while being exploited. Noting that old-style bots were rarely a problem for well-run websites, Eric Hillman, a technologist, library advocate, and founder of the Unglue It ebook project, recently posted on his blog that the current generation of bots is mindless. They use as many connections as you have room for. If you add capacity, they just ramp up their requests. They use randomly generated user agent strings. They come from large blocks of IP addresses. They get trapped in endless hallways. I observed one bot asking for 200,000 no-follow redirect links pointing at OneDrive, Google Drive, and Dropbox. And if you care, interference from no-nuance bot blocking is also causing massive gaps in things like the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine. So the economic loop of the web is feeling broken. AI models scrape your content and offer it as an immediate zero-click answer within their own platform. This strips content creators and publishers of attribution, traffic, and revenue, devaluing the very content fueling the AI ecosystem and risks collapse. As an engineer, I know it can be weird to sympathize with advertisers and how the web was historically funded. But we don't currently have all the answers to what the web feels like next, and the stats are wild. AI-driven search summaries and platforms provided users with direct answers, leading to a drastic reduction in publisher traffic, with some niche sites experiencing traffic drops of up to 90% and an estimated $2 billion loss in ad revenue for the industry. Your open source projects are feeling the weight. I know I said that before, and it deserves its own slide. A flood of low-quality code submissions, bug and vulnerability reports are death by 1,000 slops. I think we've heard that a lot from our curl creator, Daniel Stenberg. The profound automated lowering of the bar for code creation introduces human wear and software risk into core systems. That velocity is also fueling attackers for phishing attacks on your most used projects, from NPM to PyPI and crates, and where your code is housed, like GitHub and GitLab. The core tension is clear. Unmanaged AI consumption is undermining what trust we did have and eroding economic viability of the source material it relies on. So, When faced with this flood, the default initial reaction has been to use blunt instruments, block or be consumed. But this ignores the range of the needs on the internet. The future of the web, the open web, can't be reduced to a binary choice between closed and monetized or open and exploited. We must offer a spectrum of consent and configurability. E-commerce platforms and professional content publishers might seek monetization, though not all want that, or enhance security. Their boundary may need to enforce payment or protect proprietary data. Scientific archives like Archive or essential public goods like Wikipedia have the opposite need. Their integrity is tied to being radically open for the good of humanity. They need boundaries that ensure open, free access while preventing resource overload. So the solution is not about fighting the actors, but about architecting the rules. We need systems that enable content owners to declare their specific terms, whether it's pay me, attribute me, or take it freely but don't overload my servers. This is where the spirit of open source, of choice, collaboration, and transparency must guide our technical response. So, on one end, we've got Meta, OpenAI, and Google controlling 95% of all AI crawler activity. In a generous interpretation, their purpose is neutral and commercial, to train AI models, generate search results, and provide real-time responses to user queries. On the other end, there are malicious actors who leverage AI to amplify their straight-up crimes, from AI-enabled cyber attacks by finding undiscovered 0 days, to deploying ransomware, and to trick legit AI agents into data theft. Even benign chatbots are generating and distributing illegal content. The complexity of these motivations have made simple binary defenses obsolete, forcing the internet's defenders to seek more sophisticated solutions based on intent rather than origin. Think about how difficult the nuance is of filtering for intention, whether human or not, without some explicit statement that helps you confirm. Now try to do that with a technical implementation, or a bunch of them. Studies show that over 95% of the demand-side economic value derived from open source is generated by only 5% of programmers. In the face of this multi-front assault, a collective of folks in cahoots can emerge. A line of defense coming from the open source community, the web's original architects and builders. This battle is deeply personal, and they are losing a lot of sleep. This highlights the direct human toll on how underfunded, often burned out maintainers are who keep the internet running. Folks are tired. How can we help relieve the burden, build more tools? Let's begin. How do we achieve architectural sovereignty? How do we work to grant content owners choice and control? We give them all the tools. So, in response, open source developers have begun building new community-driven defense tools. The Anubis project, highly recommend, was designed to help protect the small internet from the endless storm of requests that flood from AI companies. It's great if you're first getting started in trying out these tools. Artists and creators, too, began fighting back early with tools like Nightshade, which subtly corrupts AI training data by making invisible pixel changes that cause generative models to produce useless outputs and confuse concepts like dogs and cats. AI.robots.txt project provides a collaborative community source list of AI agents to block, offering a collective defense for those who could no longer rely on good faith. And for-profit companies have joined the fray, seeing either the growing scope of the opportunity or at the very least, desperately also trying to help their customers survive the growing threats. Also, 95% of commercial software relies on open source projects, so almost quite literally everyone is impacted. Advanced machine learning and behavioral analysis can now distinguish between your average bots and the bad bots taking down our sites. Another approach, building the toll booth for content, has allowed publishers to set up paid APIs. Important to note that this is with their choosing, and being able to start charging for demand. Another way we can work towards architectural sovereignty is by granting the content owner complete control over their network boundary. One way you may see this enforced is through diverse granular rules at the edge, known as AI bot management. We can move the decision-making and enforcement out of the overloaded origin server and to the nearest point to the user or the bot. Using tools like intelligent classification, behavioral analysis, and collective threat insights, we use to classify traffic in real time. Depending on the provider, it doesn't just block. It distinguishes between the benevolent research bot, the aggressive scraper, and the potential attacker. And then we have things like a programmable switch. This critical component leverages compute at the edge, allowing developers to write custom logic for how traffic is routed and managed. This is your sovereignty switches, with options like open access. If the bot is fine and within acceptable rate limits, the edge logic routes it straight to the content. Monetization, like I said before, sort of like a toll booth. If it's classified as a commercial bot scraper, the logic immediately redirects to a paywall. Infrastructure protection. If the bot is aggressive, overwhelming resources, the logic applies rate limiting or a dynamic challenge, protecting the infrastructure instantly. Now, key takeaways here that edge can be a place where the choice and consent is technically enforced, moving us from passive to active architects. That's a tactical set of decisions you get to decide on executing. For a sustainable future, however, we also need more work to be done on the legal and ethical framework to accompany it. We can further expand the social contract based on industry-wide open standards beyond robots.txt, with a bigger posse of folks coming together to model and enforce. So there are things now that we've developed, like the really simple license. And it's an open XML-based standard that allows content owners to define machine-readable content for their digital assets. It moves beyond the robots.txt to clearly articulate usage terms, compensation, paper crawl or paper inference, and attribution, mandated citation for use. This standard allows publishers to embed machine-readable licensing terms directly into the robot.txt files, including terms for compensation if they want it. Efforts like this, along with AIB Tech Lab's LLM Content Ingest API, represents a maturation in collaboration and a breadth of choices in how to operate in this new landscape. The IAB's technical framework aims to help publishers control how their content is accessed, monetized, and represented by AI systems by replacing the chaotic crawling with standardized API. There's also things like IETF, AI Prefs. Standardizes building blocks that allow for the expression of preferences about how content is collected and processed for artificial intelligence model development, deployment, and use. The C2PA, that is the Coalition for Content Provenance and Authenticity, and that provides an open technical standard for publishers, creators, and consumers to establish the origin and edits of digital content. And lastly, but not least, or wholly comprehensive, there's also the W3C web monetization. And that's proposed as a standard within the W3C Web Incubator community group. Our job is to champion the choice to ensure the web remains flexible enough to serve the open source builders, the e-commerce giant, the individual and independent publishers, and the public good equally. The question is not if you should participate in the AI era. That's on each of us, our employers, our own existential crises. So how do you choose to set your terms? Demand architectural sovereignty by using platform partners that provide the programmable edge necessary to enforce your unique granular consent policies. Champion standards that get involved with groups working on what matters to you and your work. Be the change you want to see in the future by using or building more of these tools in the toolbox that we've talked through or need. A pretty cool part of being an open source builder is that you get to decide and you can align your technical implementation to your values. Let's build the consent-driven, resilient open web together. Thank you.